getting these three magnificent athletes here this evening. It is fantastic to be joined on this stage. It's an honour for me to be on this stage with three people who have done far more with their lives than I have. That's for sure. I'm going to start with you, Jessica. Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome to the Capital Club here in Dubai. Your story. I want to, if I may, I want to just, for anyone in the room that perhaps isn't aware of your story, tell us a little bit about Jessica Smith.
So I was born in Australia missing my left arm, and to this day we still don't know why that occurred. It was just one of those unfortunate things. And I grew up in a very sporting family, and I just remember at that time, socially, the way the world looked at disability was very negative. And I was trying to understand my place in the world and trying to prove that I was capable. And the most obvious way for me to do that was through moving my body. And I have three younger brothers. They taught me how to climb trees, how to ride a skateboard, how to pass a footy. And I fell in love with sport. I fell in love with the sport of swimming in particular, because metaphorically and literally it drowned all the excess noise out, but it was also the only sport where I didn't need any aid to help me to compete and to swim. And so because of that, it gave me a sense of freedom and a sense of exhilaration. I won my first event ever when I was 10 years old, and I felt as though I was being acknowledged for the first time for what I could do, rather than the perceived assumption from others about what they thought I couldn't, because I lived with disability. And I excelled very quickly. I was selected onto my first Australian team when I was 13, and I continued to represent Australia for about 8 years, and culminating in the 2004 Athens Paralympic Games, which was 20 years ago. I retired not long after. I had quite a tumultuous time with my swimming career. I now have 3 children. We've been in Dubai for about 5 years, and I had a midlife crisis about last year and decided to run a marathon, which happened to be in Paris. It was incredible. So I'm still involved in sport and the Paralympic movement and with the Australian Institute of Sport as much as I can, because I believe that it's such a powerful pathway and vehicle for people to be able to thrive and be the best version of themselves. So.
Love that. That deserves a round of applause, doesn't it? Not very much the condensed version. I love it though, Jessica, and I want to delve into a couple of the themes that you discussed there. But Dan, I'll move on to you because, I mean, as I say again, I've seen you in action. You are quick, Dan. Were you always destined to play rugby?
Yeah, so again, starting when I was 9 years old, was always a very fast, active child, hated sitting down, still do now to this day. So this is a 20 minutes, I think it is, hopefully, for this. But yeah, me moving, running around outside, playtime was what I really lived for at school growing up. My dad played rugby very much socially within Gloucester, within the UK, so the southwest of England. From there, I got dragged along with him to watch on a Saturday, fell in love with the sport, making tea for the guys at halftime, really enjoying the social elements of what sport brings to people. From there, realised that I was less an academic and more a sports person, so went into a college which did more sports science, etc. So fed into sport that way, went into Gloucester Academy, and then kind of progressed through the sporting ranks through the academies into international under 18s, under 20s, and then moved on to sevens. For those who don't know, sevens is different to 15s. So you have 2 elements of rugby. We have 3 of rugby league as well, but that's irrelevant today. You have union is 15 aside or 7 aside. Sevens is special because it's in the Olympics for the 3rd games this time in Paris. And yeah, 15s is always what you see. A lot of people, a lot of big, heavy people hitting scrums, etc. Sevens is the condensed version. Exciting, fast paced. And the reason why I fell in love with it, you're playing around the world, like Formula One. You're chasing the sun, you're playing in amazing things like Commonwealth Games, Olympics. And yeah, my journey started when I was 20 years old. I was lucky to play for 13, 14 years, 2 Olympic Games, 2 Commonwealth Games, a Rugby World Cup as well, 2 World Cups. So yeah, very fortunate that I was able to start from 9 years old and play through till I was 33. And now my son's playing rugby as well. So that's really nice to be able to hand down the chalice of power to him and see how far he goes as well.
The chalice of power. I love it. Big round of applause for that. And then we have a Paralympian, an Olympian, and a soon-to-be Olympian. Safiya, welcome to the Capital Club in Dubai. I hope you take this as it's meant. You're the baby of the trio. You're still at the
feel it.
You can, right? You're at the start of this beautiful journey, but tell us a little bit more. You've got your beautiful mum here with you tonight as well, and your story is, as a father of 2 young girls, your story as well is empowering. It really is. Tell us more.
So I've been in, cycling for 8 years, but I've been an athlete ever since I was like 7 or 8. I'm riding a bike even younger when I got off the stabilizers, and having a bike around the house. I've always been a mini cyclist. But I got into swimming and gymnastics, athletics, a bit of rugby, some sports, other sports at school. I always played it in the school league and under the categories, and I came to a shortcoming of swimming that I couldn't compete a bit older. There were no age categories growing a bit older. But then I moved on to athletics, and through my friends in the athletics team, I got to know that they joined the national cycling team, and it was such a small sport at the time that there was only the national team representing women. There were no amateur or teams or clubs. So it was the journey for cycling was through the national team, and they were recruiting or trying to scout students from schools. And I was really interested when I saw the branding on her social media. And I was doing cycling at the time with my father because we'd bought secondhand bikes, and we were going around the neighborhood as a hobby after work and school. And I really fell in love with cycling again, and especially using a bigger version of a bike and actually getting to cycle a bit more often. I really felt like it's something I really want to do more. And then I heard of this scouting for the national team, and I asked my father about it. He was not keen because I was studying at school, and he didn't want me, committing to different stuff other than studies. I was really good at my studies, so he really didn't want anything to interfere. But I promised him that I'd work even harder with my studies, and I really proved that to him. Well, when I joined the national team, my grades went up even more. So he was happy. He supported the journey, and my mum, he actually convinced him back in the day. Yeah. So it's been 8 years as a cyclist, growing through the national team and seeing how the sport of cycling has evolved in the UAE, and to see where it is now is really a pleasure and an honor to see it this big. And like the leadership and the government and the infrastructure, all is supporting the growth of the sport. I also read something today about the growing of more tracks and building more infrastructure for a healthier lifestyle. As much as you can do stuff outside these days, but they're still supporting. So I'm really happy. It means we have more safer areas to ride on, because roads are not that safe to ride on with people not being so educated about road cycling. So I do road cycling. I do a bit of track cycling in an indoor velodrome. And I have qualified to Paris through the road cycling. I'm looking forward to doing the longest race of my life over there.
Amazing. Big round of applause, if you can, for Safiya. Now, I don't want to embarrass you here, Safiya, but the last time I caught up with you, you were telling me you were doing your studies. The studies are done. Do we know you graduated yesterday? Fantastic.
Actually, in the World Trade Center.
You graduated. Yeah. It's all done. So it's all systems go for Paris.
Yeah, clear mind now.
I love that. I'll come back to you, Jessica, because that's an interesting point. On any athlete's journey, you're always going to have, in Safiya's case, her studies, dealing with outside noise. I would imagine, forgive me if I'm wrong, growing up, you had to prove an awful lot of people wrong in your journey to say, I can do this, and more importantly, I will do this. Maybe talk to us about some of those barriers and challenges.
Yeah, there were a lot of barriers and challenges, and I was studying as well. I was at university when I competed in Athens, and it was trying to juggle all of that and somehow channel that to be the motivating drive for what I was doing. People often ask, what was it that made you become an athlete and for you to continue? The motivation changed throughout my life. And, at first I loved it. I loved swimming. I loved competing, and I wanted to be a swimmer. But I went through the Paralympic ranks and that era when nobody really cared about athletes with a disability. That's the truth. It's a fact. There was no sponsorship. There was no support. There was no media coverage. And so it was really difficult for me to be able to identify myself as an elite athlete when I was training with Olympic athletes and not understanding why I wasn't getting the same recognition. And so realizing that there was extrinsic motivation, there was intrinsic motivation, and the motivating force changed from loving it to being angry, to being resentful. But I had to learn how to challenge that, to block out some of that exterior noise, to be able to focus on competing. And that was really, really challenging.
Interesting you use the word angry. Genuinely,
yeah,
angry.
I was very angry because I was trying to change the face of the Paralympic movement and was wanting everybody else to understand that I loved my sport and I loved my country. Why wasn't I getting that same recognition? But then I was angry socially at what was going on when we were talking about disability or not talking about disability. But I realize now that that anger served me at that time. It got me to the Paralympic Games, absolutely. But I don't have the Hollywood fairy tale ending to my swimming career. You know, I was expected to medal in 5 events in Athens, and I'm the only member of the Australian Paralympic team that didn't make a final. And there's a lot of pain and anguish with that. But throughout my swimming career, I was also struggling with anorexia, bulimia, and depression because of what I was socially going through as a young female living with a disability. So sport gave me an avenue to forget about that. And I'm grateful for that, because now as I've retired, it's the parallels that I can draw from my swimming career and apply to everything that I do today, and to realize that I like to think that myself and the other athletes competing at the time have helped to pave a way for Paralympic athletes now. And the Paralympic movement has changed extraordinarily. And I think London had a huge impact on the way the world looked at athletes with a disability. And as a social movement, it impacted the way we saw our athletes with a disability in an elite level.
It's interesting listening to you there, Jessica. I think success is all relative, isn't it? You're talking about there that you didn't make a final, and I'm sure you've had various conversations, various thoughts about that, but everyone's Olympic journey is very different. Everyone is seeking something different from their Olympic journey. For some, it will be a gold medal. For some, it will just be to medal. For others, it's about being there. And I wonder, Dan, I bring you into the conversation here because you and I have had this conversation. For you growing up, being an Olympian as a rugby player, not really something I'm sure you had on your mind. Then you hear whispers that rugby sevens is to be brought back in Rio 2016. Talk to me about the kind of emotions that you went through and then what it means in actual fact to be an Olympian.
Yeah, nice. I think just touching on Jessica's point now, I think sport's incredible because it captivates everything, shape, size, color. It doesn't really discriminate against that. And that's kind of why sport's so powerful. So growing up with my dad, he was 40 odd years old, and I used to go to the club with him, and I'd wonder what was there for him. And if for him it was having drinks with his friends, it was socializing, it was something different than just going and working in the week. And that was his release, his opportunity to grow. I think for me, sport's been really powerful in the sense that it's given me an identity, which has been a blessing and a disguise at the same time, in the sense of actually like a purpose, drive, dedication, etc. What you touched on, it gives you that real amazing opportunity to grow as a person. And I think that's really powerful. I think for me, the Olympics it's very rose tinted. I came away with a medal. So the first Olympics in 2016 compared to 2020 was polar opposites. I had 2016, we were outsiders. We somehow got a silver medal through hook and crook, got away with it, lived to tell the tale. And then 2020, we're in a better position. COVID hit, it cancelled everything out. We went to the games, we lost a semi-final, so a chance at a medal. Then we lost our third and fourth playoff, so came fourth, so one of the worst places you can be. Instead of being so close to being beat so far, and then there's no fans there was nothing, and it's such a massive polarizing kind of experience. But yeah, the games as a whole, as a journey of being able to get there in the first place is one big task in itself. And like I said, everybody's identity of an Olympic journey is so different. Like we all start off playing sport at 9-10 years old. We never think we're going to get there when we're however old. And our own Olympic Games can be so different, and wins are so different for each person as well. I'm very lucky that I can sit here and bore you about my Olympic medal, but we've all had our own wins in a degree of actually what our life looks like and what sport's given us. So that's kind of what I'm very thankful for at the same time. And yes, I get to have some amazing memories and share with my kids and my families and everything else. But sport as a whole, I'm very thankful that from looking back now, what it's given me to what I am today. So yeah, that's why it's really cool.
I love that. And Safiya, listening to both Jessica and Dan there, the kind of barriers that you've had to break through. I mean, I've got it here. You are the first female Emirati cyclist at an Olympic Games. You are, I would imagine, every day you're breaking down those barriers. And I referenced you a couple of months back when we spoke. You're a trailblazer, and I know you're maybe not comfortable with that, and I can see that you're not comfortable with that. But you are a trailblazer for Emirati women. For you, the Olympic Games, what are you seeking from it? What would be deemed a success for Safiya Alsayegh?
Well, before success, what I'm looking for through the games and so excited about is the village, the experience, being in Paris. Paris is such a, like you said, a really beautiful city. So I'm really excited for the whole vibe and the networking and meeting all the different athletes. I've been to many continental or regional games. So I'm really looking forward to that worldwide game experience, because you get to network with so many different sports and athletes rather than just cyclists, because you're normally around cyclists in other championships. So I'm really looking forward to that experience, and then coming to actually competing. Already I find qualifying such a victory for me because, I did have a conversation with one of the big names in the sport back in the time, Milano-Cortina, and he said in 6 years we need to work to get you to Paris. And then it really did happen that I did qualify through the nation ranking. So it's really a goal come true, not a dream come true to me, because you actually put sweat and effort and tears and blood went into it to actually reach it. When it's a dream, it's just a vision with you sitting down, but a goal is actually something you work for. So I'm really happy that this goal has come true. And I'd say this early, because I never expected it to come this early. 8 years back, it didn't look that optimistic to be in Paris right now, in the Olympics, not in Paris specifically, but it's great that it's in Paris, and I'm really happy to have qualified. And then another victory would be to actually complete the race, because it's going to be a very tough mission. But I get up every day with that goal in my head, and hopefully you can get closer and closer to the best performance that I can perform.
158 kilometers.
Yes.
I'm sure you've got the route. When you close your eyes and go to sleep at night, you see that route. It's quite undulating, but it's an opportunity for you to shine. I mean, that is exciting.
And I hope it's just like a shining light for others to join on, to grab onto.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting you talk about what that Olympic village is like in the Paralympic and the Olympic kind of experience, and that's what I want to go with. Jessica, you've grimaced there. Not fond memories or good memories? What?
Asked you, not me.
Is it surreal? Because I've heard the stories. The stories.
It's surreal. It's amazing. It is incredible. I was very young, and it was an phenomenal experience to be able to meet so many incredible athletes. But there's also a component where you're so excited. It's party time, party town as well, in very varying aspects. Yes. And you have to try and stay very focused in that environment. So the Olympic and the Paralympic Games is quite jarring, because you've trained so hard for this one event, and then everything that happens around it is nothing that you would ever train for. And you would never put yourself in those situations or environment in the lead up. So for example, as a serious side, swimming is an individual sport, but you're part of the swimming team. So you are expected to be there on swim deck for every single athlete who is swimming for your country. Yes, and that is a requirement. And of course, as it should be. But would I have done that at the trials when I'm trying to make the team? Absolutely not. I'm there for myself, and I have so many strict behaviors around sleep and nutrition and all of this. I would have been in bed very early. So all of these things sort of change. But that's the thing about elite athletes. You have to be agile. You have to be able to adapt under enormous pressure in these incredible environments. But enjoy it as well. And I think use that fun and that vibe and in that excitement to give you the energy and just take it all in. I mean, as you said, Paris is the most extraordinary city, and to be, able to compete and to do what you love and do that in such a, beautiful place, I think is you have to take it all in and channel it to then get the end result you're after.
It's interesting. One of the other things, and hands up if anyone else notices this, every 4 years at the Olympic Games, for some reason, you athletes go crazy for McDonald's. There's a McDonald's and the queues round the block. Is that accurate, Dan? Were you?
With COVID, there wasn't one in Tokyo, but in 2016 it was mental. Like they were like selling out like each day, and obviously like it's just a mental. Everybody's just so excited. People are, like you said, they're buzzing because they're already there. They're buzzing because of the excitement of actually competing and actually having an opportunity at winning a medal. But yeah, McDonald's was a big focal point for most athletes. And to be fair,
you know, it's crazy.
Probably the story of obviously Usain Bolt doing 1,000 or how many chicken nuggets. So yeah, you're powered by chicken nuggets. So everybody else thought they could probably do the same.
It's crazy to me that in terms of your own experience, you've already alluded to it slightly. Rio versus Tokyo, a celebration very much versus an unknown. I guess with Tokyo, and it's such a travesty, a stunning city. Japan's a beautiful country. Let's focus on the positives though. Rio, some of the unique anecdotes in your stories from Rio.
Yeah, like Rio was crazy. Again, my first ever game. So you're rubbing shoulders with some of the sporting greats, sporting legends, Usain Bolt, Serena Williams, and Venus, and like you're literally holding your tray with food, and you're literally rubbing shoulders with them as well. So it's pretty surreal to be literally moving in as if you're there with your friends. And yeah, it was just a very special time to be able to, you're walking out your residence where you're living, and you're going down, you're watching Novak Djokovic hitting a few warm-up balls against Songer. So like, it's crazy how it's just like a normal place, but it's like a circus. You've got every shape and size, from massive 6'8" basketball players to tiny gymnasts. Like it's a walking circus of everything. And I think for us, we were kind of prepped quite heavily before going in there. We had a holding camp for 2.5 weeks south of Brazil, and then we move into the village. So you're told the whole time to kind of like be very professional and be very strict. So they kind of beat it out of you before you even get in there. So that takes away some of the excitement to a degree, but you're also very aware that you're there to compete. But then once we finished competing, we were only allowed to be in there for 5 days, because they knew that we were kind of at the start with the swimming as well. Whenever the swimming finished, they literally go crazy. So for us, we were only allowed to be in there for 5 days, and they kicked us out, and then we kind of went touring. So yeah, as a village as a whole, like it's an incredible experience to be able to be rubbing some shoulders with some incredible athletes, some absolute greats of the game. But yeah, it's a very surreal exposure and moments being there as well.
I am so jealous. I am so jealous of that. Safiya, do you have make sure your phone is charged, because you never know who you'll be bumping into. In all seriousness though, and it's interesting, we're here to celebrate sport, but of course, in order to reach your sporting Everest, whatever that may be, to Jessica's point, you have to make sacrifices along the way. Can you maybe touch on some of the sacrifices you've had to make? Because I'm sure there are many that you've had to in order to get to where you are today.
Sacrifices in general, it's been like really tough studying with elite performance, and having enough time. Cycling really does take up a lot of time off your day, or sports in general, but cycling, you have sometimes like a 5-hour session, and then getting there and coming and getting ready for it and going back, it just takes up nearly at least half the day sometimes. So it was really a challenge to not to go to university and campus, but to actually finish the workup for, well, my degree in graphic design. It was challenging to actually have that creative span in your head and not have blocks of creativity and fall out of work. And then lots of traveling with cycling was a big challenge. So I think a sacrifice was prioritizing and sacrificing one side for the other at certain times of the year to perform better when I needed to perform in each side. But it's really a relief now that, well, having to sacrifice some time for the sport or sacrificing a bit of studies, it's good to get out of the way to be actually a professional cyclist now and actually commit to it fully. And it definitely will be an aid for, performing in Paris. So I'm glad I finished off 2 months before. The journey for preparing has started like way back, obviously. It's such a big stage, and it takes a lot of work. But yes, one of the sacrifices would have been, balancing and sacrificing a lot of family time and events and times of enjoyment for the sake of the sport.
Can I ask, what do you find harder, academia or cycling? What comes more naturally to you?
Cycling, definitely. My mom always says, put a bike in front of her and she'll be speaking, she'll be talking, she'll be performing.
That's it, doing your studies while cycling.
Yeah.
At the same
Yesterday
time.
at the graduation, it's like, where's your bike?
It's fantastic. And I believe, I'm told by a reliable source, you actually fly to Italy tomorrow morning. Is that right?
Actually not. I do go to Fujairah, so a different emirate here in the UAE, the end of this week to start a camp inside the country just before I travel to the Asian Championships. And then from there, I go on to my trip around Europe with racing before the Olympics and preparing for the...
Are you visiting Italy at all, or do I sack my source?
I do visit Italy right after the Asian Championships.
Sacking. That source is being sacked. I promise you that. Jess, I want to bring you back into this. I want to go back to something that you said that's been playing on my mind. You said that 2004 celebration of Paralympians, but the reality was you were, to your words, a bit of an afterthought. 20 years on, how has the world changed? When we talk about diversity, we talk about equality, inclusion. Are we there, or does a heck of a lot more still need to be done?
I think we have a long way to go, but there has been an enormous improvement when it comes to inclusion, especially around sport. But I think sport has been such a catalyst for creating that change. And I say socially because it is important to look at the social context of how each culture and nation addresses the issues around disability. And as a result of that, what we see is more and more elite athletes with a disability having a light shone on in them. And for the rest of us to go, wow, these athletes are absolutely incredible. And what that has done, it has created so many more pathways for so many young children living with a disability to see themselves represented and see themselves reflected in the sport that they enjoy, at the grassroots level. And that's something that I didn't actually have. It was saying, there was nobody who had sort of come before me that I could look up to. And I realize now that the role that I have is to make sure that I continue to be that role model and be accountable in the words that I use and the actions for all the younger athletes living with a disability who are dreaming of having that goal of representing their country.
Is that network and that kind of, I wouldn't say security per se, but the ability to seek out people like yourself, is that there now? Do you get a lot of people, whether it's contacting you, DMing you, emailing you? Are you now a support kind of network, if you will, for young athletes?
Yes, and that's been a great thing that, Paralympics Australia and I'm sure Paralympic committees all around the world have been able to do, is to bring together former athletes and say, now you can be the mentors for the younger athletes that are coming through the ranks. And, there's been phenomenal change in terms of sports diplomacy and investment in athletes and sports. It's really quite alarming, but Australian Paralympic athletes only in the Tokyo Games was the first time ever that they were given money for winning a medal. And I remember Ellie Cole, who is one of the world's most incredible Paralympic athletes, Australia's fastest Paralympic swimmer. She was in my category, actually. And when we competed together in Sydney, or just before Sydney, I was like, I'm definitely ready to retire because this girl is going to, to change the way the world looks at sport. And she did. And she messaged me in Tokyo and she just said, thank you. And she said, I'm too emotional to speak. And it makes me emotional now. But she said, I know that you and so many others worked so hard to make this happen. I just wish they would go back in retrospect and pay us all, but it's not going to happen. But these things are extraordinary. And, and so that bitterness and that anger that I lived with for a while, I now, realize that it was all worth something.
I love that. Dan, I come to you in terms of your own journey. We talk a lot about kind of looking back, and it's amazing how many, I'm very privileged in the job that I do. I get to speak to a lot of athletes across many different disciplines, and it's one of my kind of stock questions. And anyone that listens to my show probably turns off at this point, because I love to ask about regrets. It's all good and well celebrating successes. Do you have any regrets? And where does that regret or regrets, where does it sit?
Yeah, I think from my side, from a regrets point of view, it's probably, so again, growing up in the UK, sevens came in quite late. So when I was 18, 19, my goal was to play for England rugby. So 15s aside, so playing at Twickenham, playing at Scotland, playing at Wales in the Six Nations, that was my goal. That then kind of, by the time I was 22, that failed. So in essence, I'm a failed rugby player. Found an avenue through sevens, which was true. Found an avenue through sevens. So sevens was an infant sport. Infant sport. It was growing up. By 2010, it got brought onto the Olympics. So for my first kind of handful of years playing professional rugby, I was one of the lower tier 15-a-side players. I wasn't big enough or perceived big enough. I had a different skill set to some of the other players, and that's kind of where sevens, I kind of fell into that kind of pathway. So again, it's kind of why sports kind of is for all, and that's kind of where I'm very lucky about sevens, as being able to go into the Olympics, but also it's be able to play around the world, full-time contracts for a lot of other players who potentially wouldn't have made playing 15s. Again, the way that 15s is shaped, it can be a bit biased in some respects. You have bigger is better, where sevens is kind of a bit more kind of every kind of ability. It's about being fast mind, fast feet, fit, strong as well. So that's kind of where I'm very lucky for that. But my biggest regret probably was around when I was 21, I wasn't getting as much game time, not asking why, or not actually speaking to the coaches. I went internally, I felt really rejected and kind of like moved myself away from the group. And then that's when I kind of had to then move to a different club, and then that didn't progress, and I then fell into sevens. So I'm very lucky for sevens, but I think as a young athlete growing up, it's about being open with your coaches, with your players around you, and a bit of mental support around that regard. Also actually understanding, well, same in business, from a KPIs, what am I doing really well, what am I not doing really well, and how can I be better? And I think I didn't have that perspective growing up. I now do. I now talk too much. I now ask for a lot of feedback and a lot of understanding of where I'm at. But I think, yeah, if I was 22 and I had that different journey, then maybe my path would be different. Could have played for England. I doubt it. But I had a very cool group of guys who I was playing with at that time who went on and played for England. So, yeah.
And you are an Olympic silver medalist as well, Dan. And it's amazing. Again, I actually referenced this to you. It always amazes me. Certainly in the world of football, a final, you will see the runners up. And I'll put it out to you guys. You may think back to any final that you've seen. The first thing that runners up do, they'll take off their medal. They're disgusted by it. They're there to just win. The Olympics, and that's the beauty for me of the Olympics, in a lot of ways, and I haven't spoken to too many Olympic gold medalists, but gold, silver medal, and a bronze, in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter. You've got an Olympic medal, Dan. You don't look after the medal, though I've seen the medal. It's dented, it's bruised.
It's got the worn-in look.
It's got the worn-in look. Where do you keep it? Is it your bedside cabinet? Where is it?
It's in. So yeah, like this is the weird. Again, I'm very lucky to have a medal. Like again, the journey of getting there, all the blood, sweat, and tears. Looking back and like holding it in my hand, it's so special, and it's something I hold very deeply. Unfortunately, I'm obviously pretty scared someone's going to break into my house and take it, so it's kind of left in a drawer. I brought it into the office to show the guys, and they were amazed at how scratched it was. But again, it's got feel of actually being able to be passed around by people. When we wore it for like 5 days straight. We had our presentation jackets on, so it was bouncing around. We were drinking, we were dancing. So yeah, they were celebrations. It's got a bit of soul, it's got a bit of life about it, and I think that's kind of why it's quite nice. It's not just my medal. It's about people who were watching us. It's my dad who took me to training. It's my coaches who believed in me, who directed me. Some of my teammates who didn't pass me the ball, and some who did pass me the ball. So everybody contributes to my own journey of getting there, and that's kind of why the Olympics is so special. It's everyone's journey, everybody's whole sport. It's not just me. I'm very lucky that I won the medal. World records points against us in the final, so that's kind of an accolade as well. Is that not right?
Yeah, you could go
to Fiji. But yeah, like again, the medal is something that I cherish very deeply, and it's something I'm very proud of to share as well.
It's a beautiful theme you've touched on there. You talked about Jessica, about your brothers and your early years growing up and them helping you. Dan, you've talked about your mum and dad, and Safiya, that's it. You individuals up here on the stage are doing it, but it is a collective. It is a team. You've got your mother here tonight. You've got your father. You've got your friends. You've got your coaches on that. And thank you, Your Excellency. I know you're running out. You're a busy lady. Do not be silly. I have to ask you, in terms of the best piece of advice, and your mum's here tonight, so you better be directing this at your mother. But what's the best piece of advice that you've ever had?
Well, you get quite a lot of good advice along the journey. But you did touch upon taking it all in, and the past 8 years have been just so fast, with quite a lot of stress of balancing both my studies and the sport, and to actually perform and progress through those years has been a pleasure to me, because to actually see progress when you're so busy and you can't like commit to both fully, was great. And even yesterday, like graduating with honors from university was super, because like I just felt like everything, and I could actually take it in that, wow, I actually graduated with honors with all that stress. And it was one thing that I just wanted to not prove to anybody, but to prove to myself that I was able to do it with, you know, with excellency, like do both. And best piece of advice maybe would be to actually take it in, because you're on this journey, and they say that the journey is more important than the destination. So to actually take in everything along the journey, and to, oh, you said I'm a trailblazer, because I've been doing postings, I've just seen it as something I've needed to do, and not take it in as achievements that I could credit myself with.
You take it in, Safiya.
So
you
I'm
are a
really ready to
trailblazer.
take Paris in and actually like live the dream.
I love that. I love it. Right, I'm going to open up the floor. We're here tonight to listen to these guys. I know some of you might have questions. Don't be shy about this, folks, because these guys are up on this stage. I've got a couple of more, but I want to open it up. I'm seeing one or two. Any questions at all to Jessica of what she's lived through, for what Dan, for Safiya? Don't be shy. I can come to you if need be. In fact, Gabby's got a microphone now. Any questions for the guys, or will I just finish up? Will I do the heavy lifting for you? We've got a couple down here. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Started to sweat bullets there. Oh, it's always tough to think, right, what question am I going to ask these guys?
Sorry, I'm going to land everybody else with another Scottish accent.
Yeah, that's fine. We're the only two that have understood us all night. It's fine.
Okay, I have a question for Dan. I'm a big rugby fan, and rugby sevens is incredible to watch. I'd like to understand, I don't know what position you played in the rugby 15s. How was that transition to move from, I know you said sevens came and it opened up, but was that that must have been a huge transition to losing half your team and having to cover the field, and like, how was that transition journey for you?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, rugby, or real rugby, as some people wanted to call it, is 15 aside, and then sevens is only 7 aside. So you're playing on the same size pitch. The games are a little bit shorter. You're playing more games like a tournament over a weekend. So yeah, as you alluded to, the games are a lot faster paced. You're covering the same size pitch with less people. For me, I was naturally built for a faster game. So even when it's 15s in the summer months, when the pitches are nice and hard and fast, I really enjoyed getting my hands on the ball. But yeah, the transition for me was difficult. So I was doing both. And in 15s, you're taught to do something like go forwards, and sevens, you're taught to go backwards. So they're very polar opposite games, how you play the game and how you kind of maneuver. The build's very different. You want to be bigger and heavier in 15s, and sevens, you want to be fitter and lighter. So it was kind of the balancing act I had. So I was very fortunate that my sevens journey then decided to take off. Played both similar positions on the outside, on the winger, the fast guy in 15s and sevens. But yeah, it was kind of, when I moved into sevens, it became a lot more professional. We're spending 5 days, 6 days doing sevens training, specific trainings of fitness, weights. We're touring around Europe, we're touring around the world. So sevens then became naturally more my skill set, and I'm a slight player as well. So I enjoyed that kind of element of actually getting my hands on the ball and playing in the sun. Yeah.
Love it. Right question to this gentleman here.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's another Scottish accent. I think we're taking over tonight.
Any others?
I'll find one.
I think my questions with regards to community, I suppose, taking aside the level you guys play at, an elite level, obviously community is incredibly important in sport. But I'd love to know from your own opinion, having been at the Olympics and the Paralympics, why it's important for the international community to come together to celebrate an event at the Olympics.
Love that question. You're stealing my job, I think, Jessica. The community aspect of it. It's a really good question.
It's a really great question. And I think what we need to do is to realize the value that our athletes give to our nation, from a grassroots level all the way to when they're performing internationally, around the world, particularly at a Paralympic or Olympic Games. And the discipline and the hard work that those athletes have given to themselves. But when you get to the Olympics and Paralympics, it's different. It's like a different competition, and the stakes are different, and the motivating drives are different. You are carrying your nation behind you. Well, that's certainly how I felt anyway. And so to know that I had the support of, yes, my team who were there, but all the people that had helped me along the way from when I was a young child, from 10 years old, everybody played a significant role in my journey, getting me to that elite level. And so by performing and competing at the Olympics and Paralympic Games, for me in particular, it was my way of saying thank you And so to be able to bring the whole nation together to show that, I think is really powerful. And sometimes perhaps that's a message that isn't articulated very well to the rest of the nation. You know, why do we have to support our athletes? Why do they need all this funding? Why do we need to invest in them? Because we've dedicated our lives to compete at that level, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else. That's certainly how I feel. And so I like to think that if we can share those stories more, it then brings people together, and that's the power of sport. But I think certainly that sometimes that can get lost in translation.
Yeah, and Safiya, Dan, sorry.
I think from a community perspective, it's also a representation.
Yeah.
So again, there's so many different shapes, sizes, colors, and whenever you're put into that kind of position of being on street, free to air TV, you're watching kind of any sport and every sport, and you see something sometimes that looks like you or feels like you or represents you, and that's where that gives you the inspiration. So again, the bottom of the pyramid is so important because it then drives all the traffic up. And I started from the bottom with my dad and socially, and that kind of drove us into that direction as well. So it is representation to a degree as well.
And Safiya, are you aware of that? Are you acutely aware that there will be 1 million Emiratis, as well as 9 other million who call this beautiful country home, that will be rooting for you? I'll be turning on the TV and watching the cycling.
Yeah, it's really been actually hearing around campus after the uni posted about me competing and qualifying. It's been really spectacular to have everybody saying, "Oh, I'm going to watch you on the TV." Yeah, it's really been nice to have that support of people actually. Maybe people have never watched the Olympics going to watch it for me. I have my sister in the house who's not even aware what Olympics is, so I'm bringing the Olympic awareness to the house.
Your sister, yes. She'll be tuning in.
I was like, I've qualified to the Olympics. She's like, oh, yeah.
She doesn't care. She still doesn't know. As long as you're out the house, she gets the television, I think she'll be happy.
Just to touch upon that, it's like, okay, we have so much awareness and recognition for the World Cup with football, but then nobody actually knows how magnificent the Olympics is. So it's nice to actually bring more light to that and show a role model to others to actually follow on the journey and actually dream of qualifying, because I don't think many do have that dream, because it seems too unrealistic for us, especially being a young country that has joined into the different types of sports that they've joined into quite recently, and that big gap of elite performance that we have here and like anywhere else in the world is so big that it really is sometimes intimidating. But to showcase that, for me, is something I want to inspire more with.
Forgive me if I'm wrong. 4 Olympians from the United Arab Emirates this year, 3 equestrian, and yourself at cycling. Is that it?
And an athlete from the Paralympics.
And an athlete in the Paralympics. So 5 representatives for the United Arab Emirates. It's incredible. Any other questions before? Oh, yes. We're going to be here all night now. There's 3 hands that have gone up. I love it.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I'm not addressing specifically to any of you the questions, so I think I want to hear from all of you. So I was an athlete when I was young, as a volleyball athlete, and for me, one of the biggest challenges that I had was actually fighting against myself, or actually finding peace with myself when I was trying to train better than my colleagues, or to understand why I was like performing as I was supposed to. So I think I would love to hear from you, like if you had any moment in your journey that were like, oh my God, I'm not doing this right, or I'm a crap today, but how I will change this for the like tomorrow, or do you have like a piece of advice, or how was this journey with yourself during this Olympic athlete journey, and you like how it's going right now, where you think like, oh my God, today I'm not that good, but I have made it. How it's going?
Brilliant question. Insecurities, essentially. Your mind playing tricks. What are your rivals doing to get that? As Sir Dale Brailsford would call it, those marginal gains. Jessica, I'll address you first.
For many athletes, for myself, every day you have that imposter syndrome, and I'm not performing as well as my last race, and what did I do wrong, and what can I do better? But the trick is being able to switch that and use that sort of hostile negative energy that you have when you're fighting against yourself, to improve the next day, and just to show up the next day, and just to be accountable for all of those little things, because I think that's just human nature. We criticize ourselves, we analyze everything that we do, and certainly as elite sports people, every little bit counts. And so you scrupulise all of that. And I think it's about learning how to manage that and to not push it to the side, but to be able to learn that, you know, these emotions are all part of that driving force to get me to show up to the next training session and to the next race. And it's just repeating that. And sometimes it can be, you know, Groundhog Day, but that's what gets athletes to that elite level, is you have to show up, you have to be there, you have to do it, because that's what gets you to that level. So it's not that it doesn't exist. I think it exists for all of us. Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I think they're natural thoughts. Again, spent some time with like psychologists within sport, and they call it hijacking. You're hijacking yourself, and it's the same for anybody. Where each day we have like 10,000 thoughts, and they're not always positive. Sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to do this, or they're negative. And for me, when I was an athlete, I said this before, but I would be stood in the tunnel 2 minutes before a game. All I could think about was, I hope I get injured. I hope I broke my leg, or I hope or something goes wrong so I don't actually play the game. I was that not nervous, but there was my brain was being hijacked by my other brain or whatever else. I've only got one brain, but yeah. But yeah, it's finding a way of actually being okay with those thoughts. And by the time I remember like standing in a tunnel, and I'd be having these hijacks, and I'd go through my own process, which I was again through training, through work before you even get there, you kind of work on. But then by the time I run out, and then it all kind of washes over you, and then you go back to kind of the normal mode of kind of autopilot. So yeah, being hijacked is quite natural when you work on things like meditation and mindfulness. Those things help kind of slow your brain down to actually understand the consciousness of actually, I'm okay, I've been here before, I'm not scared, it's okay, it's okay to be scared. So yeah, these are natural thoughts. So yeah.
Safiya?
On my side, I've actually been working on this specific topic for about 1.5 years, like the mental side of sport and my performance through the mental side. And I actually dedicated my whole senior project for such a topic. And it was a whole kit to start raising awareness, how you speak to yourself, and then how you can change that way of speak. Like you said, we go through so much negativity that we're actually contained by it. And whatever we are contained by is what we live by, you know. So actually changing the view of the inner self, and you do activities where you swap words, like negative words that you speak to yourself with, to positive words, which with writing you can actually wire your brain even better. And you get to start actually realizing how you speak to yourself, because when you're doing, like, you're actually practicing the sport, most of the time you speak to yourself without even thinking about it, because they are your thoughts. But actually then realizing, wait, I'm saying that I can't. No, I can. And like with cycling, we go through such extreme fatigue and soreness and, you know, pain, that those words really control your performance. And actually limiting those words and changing them to actually aid you is one thing that I've been working on. And not every day you're going to feel at your best. I've been through lots of periods in my life where it's been like really tough periods that I never thought I could come out of. But then changing the perspective I had of myself, and then just working and trusting the process, is what got me through it. I nearly actually quit cycling when I signed my first pro contract. But UAE Team ADQ had great help, my family, keeping me there and getting me out of that dark hole, I name it. And I think if I had more mental toughness that I'm working on now, it would have been a different story, because I would have actually been able to help myself before people helped me.
Great advice across the board.
Sports, like, it's probably the unwritten bit people don't see it. It's very easy to turn up and train to a degree. It's very easy to push yourself. It's very easy to be told by your coach to go and run. It's the bits where you are in that deep hellhole and you can't see the way out, and actually being able to actually hold on and push through. That's the bits where actually you see the resolve and you see progression and growth. And they said there's the hijacking bit, which takes you across and over here, but actually being able to actually hold on for dear life and actually understand the mental part of actually sports so much more powerful than probably what it was 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And the more bad experiences that you have, the more you can hold on, because you actually can relate on dark holes and then say, okay, I got through that, I can get through this. So actually holding on to those dark times will
holding on
more and more
dear life.
like you said.
It's like us in the broadcast world. Just hold on. Hopefully your voice will hold out. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Right, I want to get to these final two questions. I appreciate we're getting late, so I've got one here and one down the front, and then we will wrap up proceedings this evening. Thank you, sir.
Yep. So question to Jessica. The Paralympics, of course, it's getting attraction, especially on TikTok, right? So there is a lot of content. And this is a very difficult question for you.
Okay.
Is that you could say that there are some, they make it in a very nice, entertaining way. And it is a negative and a positive. And there's a huge split, right? Is that it does.
Are you talking about the videos that are like everyone's laughing at? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean, on TikTok, especially that they are, in the Paralympics, basically they would have moments of athletes, having, they would
falling
match
out of their chair.
yeah, basically,
yes,
and it does really raise that millions of views, and it is positive because it has awareness. But then a lot of people are very split about that view.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So for people who might not be aware, there was some TikTok videos or a TikTok account that was made, and they would show snippets of Paralympic athletes, let's say, falling out of their chair during a wheelchair basketball game. And it was to try and get views, to try and get that engagement up. And there's been a lot of discussion about whether that was the right way to generate engagement and views. It's a really tricky one, definitely, because in some instances, a lot of athletes are like, we can laugh at ourselves, and it is okay to have humor. And I laugh at myself all the time when I go to do something, and I'm like, oh, but I can't because I only have one hand. Or my husband's like, oh my God, I forgot you only have one hand. Or I'll go to the nail salon, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it's okay, as long as you give me 50% off, it's fine. And they're like, oh my God, I'm like, don't worry. Or when someone says, can I give you a hand? And they're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. I'm like, it's okay. So we have to be able to find the humor, as long as we're not mocking or degrading or disrespecting people in the process. And I think that it depends on the intention behind that. And I think a lot of the athletes that were involved in the videos that were shown, they were okay with that content being shared. And so as long as the person involved is aware and they understand the intent behind why this is part of the messaging, I think it's also that this new term, positive discrimination, as well, like even in the workplace, what roles do we have for people with a disability or for women, for example, and how do we start to break down those barriers? There has to be some way that something comes first. And I think that by showcasing that in a humorous way, I do see that can help. But there was a lot of negativity around that, as well as like, hey, we're not here for you to laugh at.
Yeah.
But I think what helps is awareness, and by having conversations around it to say you have to have some perspective, you have to understand what the intent was. And I think that we can never lose our sense of humor. And if our sense of humor brings people together and it connects us and it enables us to learn a little bit more about a topic that we didn't know beforehand, then I think there's space for that, definitely.
Yeah, great answer. Right, was there a question down here? We'll make this the last one. I'm so sorry if there is. Sorry, sir. I'm just conscious that we want you guys networking this evening as well.
This is a question for Safiya. So obviously you are the first female Emirati cyclist to go to the Olympics, and that's a huge responsibility. How does that make you feel? And is there any pressure that weighs on you that comes with that sort of title or I suppose designation?
Well, the responsibility is big to try and, reach that peak performance, to be able to represent my country well. But then I think it's not the first time doing the first or being the first. So I think I don't look at it in that way of, making it a burden on me or that it makes me anxious. I'm just trying to anticipate it in the best way. Again, changing it to a view of positivity and representing my country in the best way and shining that flag over there for the first time in the cycling peloton, especially in the women's cycling peloton, is something that I'm really proud of and I look forward to doing. So just really looking at it really positively, but then being harsh on myself with training and progressing is, what I've got burden on me. So yeah, I really try to take it in the best way possible, to look at it as an experience that might be a one in a lifetime experience. God knows if I'm actually cycling for the next edition or if I qualify. Hopefully, if I do qualify, I'd love to have more with me qualifying, not in just my sport, in other sports. So it's just being there and showing up like I've been doing for the World Championships. The first World Championship participation for Emirati women was 2 years ago, and I didn't even finish that race. But I think, like, if I look at it now, it's just showing up, being there and showing up and showing people that it's possible. Even if I'm not completing the whole race, it's a show up for me to actually complete the race in, say, the 5 years with like that big performance gap. And it's just showing up there that will actually get that gap, well, close that gap more and more every year. So I just try to show up and give my best, even if it's not what people think as the best. But if I know it's my best, and I'm like cycling my heart out, so that's all that matters to me.
It's what Jessica said at the start. Success, it's relative to everyone. Your success is different from someone else's, and you do you, Safiya.
Well, the quotation of passion over perfection, and it's like setting your own perfections and not chasing people's perfections, chasing your perfections with your passion and
Love that.
leading the way.
Love it. You're a
The way you
poet
like it.
as well as a cyclist and an honours degree academia as well. Last one from me, Jess, I'll come to you. I guess in a lot of ways it's kind of looking and directing this. Safiya, you've lived it. You've lived the Paralympics back in 2004. Bit of advice for young Safiya in the nascent stage of her career.
Yeah, which probably just off the back of that question would be to make sure that the team around you is there after. I think that there's all this build up and there's all this hype, and often we forget about our athletes and the come down, the real come down that happens after this huge, huge event. Everyone's supporting you, and then all of a sudden it's over. And how do you transition back out of that? And I think that that is the most important. So I know you've got an incredible team behind you, but I think that that's what I lacked. And certainly it wasn't, you know, we talk about the sports psychologists and things like that that were there to help athletes, didn't really exist in the same capacity when I was competing. So it was like, off you go, see you later. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like really quite depressed now. So that would be my bit of advice, is just make sure that there's a plan for after.
Powerful. Love it, Jessica. Dan, for you.
No, I think it's that, to be honest. Like, I think the journey of, you're riding a crescendo down. The journey is going only this way. The excitement, the buzz, your own kind of journey you're going on as well. So I think it's just understanding that actually after it's not failure, whatever it looks like. Success is the fact that this is an amazing journey, and it's only going to give you future life opportunities as well, and just that journey as a whole. So yeah, have the support for after, and just enjoy as much as you can. Breathe it in. Be still, enjoy those moments, live them deep in your core, and then just go out there and ride as fast as you can.
Exactly that. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. I could stay up here all night long, but I'm conscious there are other things to do. I just want to say a massive thank you to you, Jessica, to you, Dan, to you, Safiya. I could listen to you guys talk all evening long. It's been insightful. I hope you guys have got something out of this evening. Thank you, the three of you, all so much, and the very best of luck in your future endeavours. Big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Right, I can ask. Oh, we'll get a picture. We'll get that. All important. We'll do a picture now. At the end. Okay, after. Guys, if I can ask that you please take your seats, and we'll hand back over to our man from On Location, a man who has already spoken this evening, but let's get him back up now. It is Harold to say a few words to close out with proceedings tonight. Over to you, Harold.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to see that we have the right to talk when we don't have a Scottish accent also during this evening. But my name is even more beautiful with the Scottish language, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you to everyone who talked tonight. Thank you for your time. Really precious to have all of your outcomes here. As you were saying, it's incredibly enlightening, you know, to have your perspective on that. And I hope it's giving you a right excuse, you know, to visit us in Paris. I don't know if it's the most beautiful city in the world, because I'm from Marseille myself, and there is a competition there. But yeah, definitely there's going to be some really cool things to see and to witness during this summer. So we hope that we will have the pleasure to welcome you there. And thank you very much again for coming here and taking the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Harold. Right, a photograph. Are we going to do the photo? No, we'll do it after. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that I guess concludes the sit-down part of this evening. Do take advantage of the stunning hospitality here at the Capital Club Dubai. I just want to extend my gratitude again to the team down here. A big thanks to On Location. A big thanks to our three guests. Once more, big thanks to Harold as well. And yeah, enjoy your evening. Don't rush off. It's still early. It's only 12 minutes past 8. The night is young. Stick around. Make sure you speak to our athletes as well. Speak to Harold. Find out more about On Location and enjoy yourselves. For myself, Chris McHardy, thank you so much for your attendance this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.